Have you been to Disney World recently, or are you worried about going to Disney World and taking the Disney World transportation? Well, worry no more. We're here to help you here at Carousel of Douglas. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Carousel of Douglas. Today we're going to be talking about the Walt Disney World transportation system. Now, this video was actually requested by a good friend of mine who is also an avid viewer. His name is Mike Gaylord. He was recently in Disney World and he said to me that he wished he had a little bit more information about how the Disney World transportation worked. We're putting this video together. Sorry we can't help you for your latest trip, Mike, but hopefully for your next one, you're going to be all kinds of knowledgeable about Disney World transportation, but thanks for the idea. So here we go. We're going to talk about the whens and whys you should take different types of Disney transportation. Now, one of the first things I want to talk about is that Disney transportation starts running about 45 minutes before the parks open and about 1 hour after the parks close. So when a park opens, the transportation that gets to that park will start leaving about 45 minutes before. Let's use Animal Kingdom. If it opens at 7:30 in the morning, the Disney transportation will start running about 6:45. And if it closes at, say, 8 p.m., it's going to stop running around 9 p.m. So just to give you an idea, it's about 45 minutes before the park opens and about an hour after is how long Disney World transportation will service any park. Okay, the first transportation we're going to talk about is the tried and true Walt Disney World buses. Now, the Walt Disney World buses are pretty awesome and driven by some of the most amazing cast members throughout the entire park system. A lot of them have been doing it for the longest time, and a lot of them are just really great, friendly, helpful people. Now, Walt Disney World buses are going to be your most trusted way to get to parks, but they're not always the fastest. There's a lot of factors that kind of work into that, and you will always be able to catch a bus to almost every single park at almost any time you want to, and that is probably the most reliable way to get anywhere on Disney property from any Disney hotel. But I will tell you that there are certain times when it starts becoming a problem. One of the times is that there are some resorts that have multiple bus stops around the resort that pick up people throughout the trip. And you might actually end up with a full bus if you're at one of the last stops at that resort and it doesn't stop at your stop. So you gotta be careful. There is a lot of chance that you might be not getting on a bus if there's a lot of people trying to get on at that time. Now, there's a number of resorts that have multiple bus stops. Those resorts are Port Orleans Riverside, Coronado Springs, Caribbean Beach, Saratoga Springs, Old Key West, and the Fort Wilderness Resort and Campground. Now, the Fort Wilderness Resort and Campground has multiple stops, but it's actually more of an internal shuttle system that brings you back out to the main fort area when you are trying to get to the park. So just understand that there's a shuttle inside the campground because it's so huge. There's also the bus that goes to and from the parks from the front of the resort. So the bus system at those resorts can be a little bit challenging, and especially if you're at one, again, if you're at one of the last stops, you may end up with a very full bus that you can't get on and they may just skip over you. And that's another one of the problems about the buses, that when they fill up, they stop stopping at stops. There's a lot of stops in there, but they'll stop going to those stops if they're full. And we were one time in September going to Epcot, and we actually got to this bus stop way before the Epcot buses were running. And the Hollywood Studios people who are trying to get to Hollywood Studios had been there since like 8:30, and it's now like 10. And the park was officially opening at 10 that day, and those people had not gotten on the bus yet because bus after bus had gone past full. And they were pretty upset. And the weird thing was there was no bus attendant. And that's another strange thing, is that there was no bus attendant there. Generally, you have somebody from Disney Transportation who is monitoring where people are trying to go. And if they notice that you are not getting that bus that you need, that they'll call one in, because that's one of the reasons why the buses are so reliable. The Disney Transportation central office will just constantly reroute buses. And if you notice that you're having too many people coming in for a single bus, or they will actually start calling extra buses. So that's why the Walt Disney World transportation system is so reliable. And you can also always check the times on the boards that are in the bus stops or in the My Disney Experience app. There is a spot in the app for checking the buses there too. So just understand that the buses are probably the most reliable, but you need to leave extra time to get to wherever you're going because the buses may take longer than you're expecting. Now, one tip I have that's the bus is probably better, even though it may not be the most magical way, is getting from the Disney Ticket and Transportation Center, which we call the TTC, to Magic Kingdom. Most people try to get on the monorail or the ferry. Both excellent choices, but there's also a bus that goes to the Magic Kingdom, and it's generally faster. So if you actually want to beat all those people waiting for the monorail or the ferry, look for the bus stop and get on the Magic Kingdom bus. It'll actually be surprisingly faster. So just understand, the buses are reliable. You will always get to where you need to go, but they're not always the fastest, and you may have to wait for a number of buses. Okay, I'm going to throw in a little segment here about when I think you should walk. Now, I know I'm talking about Disney World transportation, but there's nothing better than your legs sometimes in Disney World. And one of the things I will tell you is that there's a couple times when I actually recommend walking. One of them is if you're staying at the Epcot resorts. I'm talking about Swan and Dolphin, Boardwalk, Yacht, and Beach Club. If you're staying at any of those resorts, I actually highly recommend that you walk to the International Gateway for Epcot, or you walk to Hollywood Studios. Now, the walk to International Gateway from all those hotels is about 5 minutes at the most. It's not a lot at all. The walk to Hollywood Studios, 10 to 20 minutes, depending on how fast you walk. And it's a lovely walk. It just goes along the river there, and you do get to the front gate, but it does take a little bit of time. So if you're not really up for about a 15 to 20 minute walk, well, then I would recommend that you do take the transportation that's available, but that's a great time to walk. Another great time to walk is if you're staying at the Contemporary, you should definitely walk to the Magic Kingdom because it's like less than 5 minutes, and you get your own special security zone, so you don't have to go through the big, massive one that everyone's going through from the buses and all the other places. The other thing that I would recommend walking is actually that new walking path that they just added at the Grand Floridian. You just have to be careful. There is a drawbridge that's sometimes open. I think it's only opening for the electrical water pageant, but it can be open, which would cause you to be unable to make it to the Magic Kingdom because it completely blocks the path. So just be careful. Pay attention whether that drawbridge is open. I think they do have signs that warn you if it is open, but the walking thing is a great idea from those parks to the Magic Kingdom. Now, the last walking thing I recommend is Saratoga Springs walking to Disney Springs, because Saratoga Springs is right up against the edge of Disney Springs, and so you can easily walk there just going around that boat dock there at the end. It doesn't take long at all. So those are the times that I actually recommend that you walk to Disney World. All right, the next form of transportation we're going to talk about today are the Disney boats. There are boats all over the place. Now, there's the Bay Lake and the Seven Seas Lagoon boats. The Seven Seas Lagoon boats leave from the Polynesian or the Grand Floridian. Now, they are specifically transporting you from those deluxe resorts to the Magic Kingdom, and they're usually kind of on the smaller side. The same with the boats in Bay Lake. Now, Bay Lake service Contemporary Hotel, the Wilderness Lodge, and the Fort Wilderness Campground. Now, making those boats is kind of tough. They don't run very often at all. They're actually a little bit on the smaller side. They do have some larger ones that come around, but most of them are actually some of the smaller boats that are made to look like Steamboat Willie, actually. And they don't really move all that fast. Now, it's a lot of fun to take a boat, especially those smaller boats, to the Magic Kingdom. They get their own landing, you get a little bit faster access to security, so those boats are a lot of fun. Just understand that you may be waiting a long time, you may not get on the boat, and then you have to wait for the next one. So just be careful with the boats on Bay Lake and Seven Seas Lagoon. Now, there are also some boats at the Epcot resorts. They're called friendship boats. Friendship boats are actually a little larger. They're pretty cool. One of the little tips about them that I learned is that they actually have a propeller that spins 360 degrees, and if the captain keeps spinning the wheel, the propeller will just keep spinning too. So they actually have to pay attention kind of where their propeller is facing while they're moving those boats. So apparently they're a real challenge, and they only let the more seasoned guys drive those things. So I just think it's pretty cool that they have that 360 propeller. But the friendship boats are pretty awesome, and they travel between all the Epcot resorts and Hollywood Studios as well. So they kind of do this big loop. And those boats actually do a pretty good job of getting to those parks if you're trying to take a nice quick trip in. But I would say that they are a little on the slow side, and you can be waiting for them for a little long. So the friendship boats are a little bit of a toss-up as to whether they're helpful. They can be quick if you catch them at the right time, but they also can take forever, just so you know. There's also some friendship boats that travel from the top of the World Showcase Lagoon to the bottom of it, down by those two gift shops that are down there, and you can actually take those boats to kind of speed your travel around the World Showcase. They just constantly do a loop there. They don't leave the parks, but there are a pair of friendship boats that actually kind of cycle through there too. So just understand that there's also some friendship boats in the World Showcase Lagoon. The next major boat I'm going to talk about is the Walt Disney World Magic Kingdom Ferry. The Walt Disney Magic Kingdom Ferry are just magical, gigantic boats that can take hundreds and hundreds of people across the way to the Magic Kingdom, and it's actually more of the way that Disney intended you to get there. He wanted the slow build to the magic, and the ferry boat is definitely the way to do that. As it crosses the lagoon and Magic Kingdom gets closer and closer, the magic just builds for you. It's just awesome. Now, the ferry boats are a lot faster now because they've actually added a two-tiered exit and entrance system for your debarkation. It makes it a lot quicker to get into the Magic Kingdom because you can get off from multiple levels of the ferry, and they do carry like a lot of people at once. So the ferry boats are a really great way to go if you want to make sure that you get on something, because they just pile people on those things. But the one problem with the ferry boats is that if you miss a ferry boat, you're going to be waiting forever. And also, at the end of the night, everyone is trying to get on the ferry boat because no one wants to walk back and no one wants to take a bus back to the Ticket and Transportation Center. And so the ferry boat line at the end of the night is just ridiculous. So just be careful, understanding when and where you should take the ferry boat. End of night's probably not your best bet. Actually, I recommend the bus at the end of the night if you're going back to the Ticket and Transportation Center, not the ferry boat. But the final boat I'm going to throw in here is a little bit of an honorable mention. There is a great set of pontoon boats called the Sassagoula Floatwork Company. And the Sassagoula Floatwork Company are these pontoon boats that take you from Port Orleans Riverside, Port Orleans French Quarter, Old Key West Resort, and Saratoga Springs Resort to Disney Springs. And these are smaller pontoon boats. They hold about 30 to 40 people, I think, at a time. And they will go just loop eternally during the day to Disney Springs. And it's a great way to kind of get down there. You take the Sassagoula River to get there, and you have different boats for the different resorts, each one having their own. The Port Orleans resorts having their own boats, and Saratoga Springs and Old Key West having their own boats individually. So there is a lot of good transportation on that river to get to Disney Springs. It's a lot of fun that those moderate resorts have that little extra plus up in transportation to Disney Springs on those pontoon boats. But those are the Disney World boats. Okay, the next form of transportation we're going to talk about today is the newest form of transportation at Disney World, and that is the Disney Skyliner. Now, I got to tell you, I think the Skyliner is just incredible. It's a lot of fun. It's a beautiful ride. It's a quiet ride. It's very, very relaxing. I really enjoy the Skyliner, but I have to tell you, it's probably one of the slowest ways to get around. Now, it goes to Epcot and Hollywood Studios from the Riviera Resort, Caribbean Beach Resort, Art of Animation Resort, or Pop Century Resort. So those two value resorts actually get an extra Disney transportation. And to get to the Epcot or Hollywood Studios, it's a lot of fun to take that trip. It's way up high in the sky. You get a great view. You can see all kinds of sights you don't normally see in Disney World from up there. And it's really awesome. But I will tell you, at rope drop time, when the parks are opening, Hollywood Studios and Epcot are opening, oh my goodness, those stations just pack full of people because they're not the fastest loading. You only put about 6 to 8 people into a gondola at a time, and the weather can affect them. If it starts storming, they will clear the gondolas and stop them, and so you could end up stuck at that station. The gondola system is the most prone to weather. Like the buses, they're going to run no matter what. Most of the other transportation is going to run no matter what. Maybe they stop the boats and thunderstorms, but they pretty much run everything else in going on. But the gondolas stop all the time because of the weather. So you have to be prepared, especially in Florida. It rains a lot. It storms a lot, almost every day. So you got to be prepared for that. But the gondola system is very, very, very efficient, but you're not going to get there the fastest. It's really good if you're going to, say, the Riviera to go to Topolino's Terrace for dinner. It's a great idea, but it's not the greatest idea to get there at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day because those stations just pack full of people and it takes a long time to get into the gondolas sometimes, and it's just pretty crazy. I'm sorry if I'm bagging on the gondolas, but I love the Skyliner. It's just not the most efficient way to get somewhere quickly. It is probably the easiest way to get somewhere, but it's not the quickest whatsoever. Okay, I'm going to throw a quick one in here. The next thing is the Minnie Van. Now, the Minnie Van is operated by Lyft in a partnership with Walt Disney World, and they're pretty awesome. But I will tell you, they're not running currently. They did say that they're coming back, but I also say that they are very expensive. They actually kind of use a flat rate system instead of the mileage system, and you can get charged a pretty penny. Now, I will tell you that the minivans are great if you're running late or if you need to get somewhere quickly, because you page a minivan, it's all you, it takes you right where you need to go. It's a good idea to take a minivan in that instance. But I will warn you, they are expensive. They do come with child seats though, which is not very common in most Lyfts or Ubers, but they always come with child seats. The drivers are seasoned, they know the parks like the back of their hand, and on top of that, they're also very knowledgeable, and they will share that knowledge with you while you're taking the ride. I love the drivers for the minivans, but the minivans are in my opinion, a last-ditch effort kind of thing, mainly because of the price, but they are pretty awesome when you do take them. All right, we've come to our last one, and you know what it is.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
Yep, you got it. The monorail. My absolute favorite way to move around Walt Disney World is the monorail. It has been since I was a little boy, and I just love it. Now, I will tell you that the monorail does have its downsides, but in my opinion, it's mostly got a plus side. Now, the monorail only travels around from the Ticket and Transportation Center, the TTC, to Magic Kingdom and through those resorts, or it goes from the TTC to Epcot. So it's only for that area of Walt Disney World, and it is probably the fastest way to get to Magic Kingdom from the TTC or from the Polynesian, Grand Floridian, or Contemporary hotels, who are all on the monorail line. One of the things I have to say that I absolutely love is the fact that the monorail travels through the Contemporary Hotel. It's just so awesome to have it just go right through the hotel. It looks so cool. Anyway, the monorail is very, very fast and gets you to the parks, except at the end of the day. At the end of the day, everyone's trying to get on the monorail. That line takes forever to clear out, and if you're not one of the first people in that line, you are not getting on that monorail for a very long time. Now, they run a whole lot of monorails, but after fireworks at Epcot or Magic Kingdom, forget it. Don't take the monorail. It is not worth your time to wait and all that, especially if you didn't get out of the park, like you weren't like the first person out of the gates. It'll take forever to get back to anywhere on the monorail system. Now, I will tell you that when Michelle and I are staying at the Polynesian, we actually love taking the monorail as often as possible. We take it to Magic Kingdom. We will walk over to the TTC and get on it for Epcot. We do that all the time. Just know that there are two types of monorails. There is the resort monorail, which does the loop. It stops at Magic Kingdom, Contemporary, Ticket and Transportation Center, Polynesian, Grand Floridian, and Magic Kingdom, and just keeps doing that. Then there's also the Express, which does Magic Kingdom, TTC, and just keeps looping. Then there's also the Epcot line, which goes, obviously, from the TTC to Epcot. So just understand that you need to make sure you get on the right train. There's multiple entrances. They label them really clearly, and that is the easiest way to get to those parks from there. I actually know a number of people who who, instead of parking at the Epcot parking lot, will actually park at the TTC to take the monorail in, because they find the monorail is much easier to deal with to get to Epcot than it is to park at Epcot. So just understand that's a little tip there. A lot of people like to park at the TTC to go to Epcot. The monorail has a couple downsides where it is often very crowded. You will often stand while riding the monorail. And if you're not able to stand for longer periods of time, that's something to consider. Now, most people are kind and will let those, if they can tell someone's having trouble standing, they'll let them have the seats. But there's not a lot of seats. It's standing room only, and they will just pack the monorail full. Just so you understand that they're just going to fill that monorail all the way up and load it down. So if you have trouble with being in enclosed spaces with a lot of people, make sure you're paying attention for that too. Oh yeah, real quick, I would really love it if you would check out my video on riding the monorail all the way around the Magic Kingdom Resort Loop. It was a lot of fun to make. I have the entire spiel that they put on there. Please check out that monorail video. I think you'll love it. It was so much fun to make. But the monorail, honestly, it's my absolute favorite. And you can't go wrong every time you get to hear this.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
All right, folks, there you have it. There is our video on our tips and tricks for Disney World transportation and when and you should or shouldn't ride it. So hopefully that has been helpful for you. If you have a favorite type of Disney transportation, leave it in the comments down below. I try very hard to answer every single one of your comments personally. Also, if you could give this video a thumbs up, I'd very much appreciate it. It makes the algorithm love this video, and then YouTube sends it out to other people and they can get help too. I would really also love it if you extra love this video that you click that subscribe button. Now that subscribe button is the easiest way to support this channel, and also it'll tell you when things like live streams come up, which we're going to be doing relatively soon. It's been my pleasure helping you with Disney transportation today. I hope you've had fun, and around here we don't like to say goodbye because we're gonna see you real soon. So we say, see ya bye.